a topic that I actually wanted to talk for a really long time, and I'm getting to talk about it, which is peer pressure. So, I think peer pressure is something, I don't know, for some reason everyone is scared of this, peer pressure. But I all, and they always say it's always looked at a very negative way. And because peer pressure is can influence you in a very negative way, but it's also, I won't say it's necessarily entirely negative. So that's why I want to talk about it. And people are I don't know if they're scared about it or what their whole thing about peer pressure is. Like, if you say someone that you're a victim of peer pressure, they are not ready to accept it. But the honest truth is, everyone has been a victim of peer pressure, every single person. And it's a completely normal thing. There's nothing to not I don't think it's I think it's weird. I don't think it's fine. I think it's fine that you're not ready to accept it also. That's something, you're being influenced by someone, uh, because you won't like to hear something like that, right? So, but I think it's completely fine. That's natural. We as humans, will be influenced by what people around us, and it leads to a positive and a negative impact on us, unfortunately or fortunately. So, I think we will be so we'll get into let's dive into the topic first. What's peer pressure? I couldn't come up with the definition, so I just literally I googled and I tried to figure out the best definition, and the one definition that came was, it's a feeling that one must do the same things as other people of one's age and social group in order to be liked or respected by them. Now, here's the problem I have with this definition, because I spent quite some time in trying to search a right definition on Google, just for the better grammar and everything. So the main problem is, every definition of peer pressure is exactly this. And I don't know, for me personally, it's a very narrow definition, I believe, because I don't think peer pressure is necessarily done in a social group to be liked or respected. I feel like it's something that just sometimes peer pressure influence on us, it gets naturally influenced on us, I believe. I don't, if something you see people around you doing, and if you do it, I don't think you're doing it to necessarily to impress them. Maybe you are, but I don't think it's entirely to impress them, or you want to be part of the group. I think it's just because of being around the people, such people, those kind of activities may seem positive to you, when in hindsight it may not be positive. But at the time, because you're surrounded by such people, you think it's positive. So that's why naturally you yourself might fall into peer pressure. So I don't necessarily think it's done to impress or to fit into a group or anything. I think it's just, peer pressure is natural. I think people itself getting influenced by other people is a very natural thing, right? So peer pressure can, like I said, peer pressure, I think, is not just, it's something can happen directly as well, I guess, because a group of people, they are telling you to do something. It can be anything, what okay, I'm not gonna give an example. It can be anything, but if they're forcing you to do it, that maybe it's something you're doing. You may do it because they're forcing you to a point. They've convinced you to such a point. You also think, maybe it's not as bad as I thought, and you may end up doing whatever that you're being forced to do. But I think it also can be happening indirectly. Let's how to put it, okay, let's say music itself. Because let's say you were listening to so you heard someone else listening to some music, and you heard it's good. So that person may not be someone you even met, huh? And but heard from that person, somehow you're convinced from that person itself. And then if you start listening to that music again, I think that itself is peer pressure. It's indirect. That's what it's indirect peer pressure. It's not direct. That's what I keep telling. I don't think peer pressure is necessarily something to impress a group of people, or to fit into a group. I think it's just, it can happen because of, I think it can happen because of anything, I believe. Even if you saw some, I think if you see some food, out there, and I think if you're convinced enough by, some you by some influencer on social media that this is good, and you try it, you may or may not, you saw the reviews are good, and you're still convincing yourself to like it. That also is peer pressure. Yeah? You're not trying to, you that is peer pressure in the end of the day, right? So peer pressure can be indirect as well, I believe. And some peer pressures are evident, some are not evident. Like, something, like everyone say, right? I think alcohol and substance abuse is something, is something people end up getting addicted to substance and alcohol, and that's a lot. Peer pressure has a lot to do with it. This is evident, and when I say peer pressure, these are the things that people actually think. But I think peer pressure is way more than that, man. I feel like it can be something even indirect. It can be even the way you talk. It can be some of the words you use. It can be some of the mannerisms that your friends have, that you're so used to, seeing them speak in such a way that you yourself are now talking that way. And, maybe you are hanging out with that person so much that you are also speaking like that person, and others may not have figured it out. But, it still is an evident peer pressure. And like I said, you might find it weird that even this can be counted as peer pressure, but peer pressure is pretty simple. It's just, in simple words, it's being influenced by what other people are doing, and you are influenced by what other people's actions are. So, these small things also, what you like, maybe you prefer some certain kind of a breakfast over what you used to eat before because of, your friend. That also, is indirect peer pressure. But is that wrong? I don't think so. I mean, you are the thing you are not the thing about peer pressure is, I don't think you, like, when you are become a victim of peer pressure, you have not realized it, right? Like, you have not realized. I think when that moment happens, you're not like, oh my god, I'm a victim of peer pressure. No, like, when it happens to your mind, it may be right or wrong, but you are doing, you're doing it, probably even without knowing it sometimes. So that's why, and those are the ones that are, that are not evident. They're very subtle, I believe, in your behavior. Probably your hairstyle, what you like to wear, where you like to hang out on a daily basis, what kind of music you like to hear. These small things, that may not be evident to people. That also is a victim, is example of peer pressure because of being surrounded by such people. But again, peer pressure can be, negative and positive. Positive is something I'll get into a little bit towards the end. But let's talk a little bit about the negative things. So, one, like, I've spoken it enough, and I've said peer pressure can be anything. Peer pressure, I don't necessarily believe, that peer pressure has anything to do with just, you doing something like breaking the rules, or getting addicted to something. I don't think just these things are peer pressure. Like, a lot of people think what may, seem, like, people's assumption is peer pressure is basically negative influence, right? I don't necessarily think so. Peer pressure can be anything. It can be even what you like, what you like wearing. It can be, you know, the kind of, okay, let's say glasses. I wear glasses. The style of glasses keep changing. The trend keeps changing. Every single year. The fact that you seeing a bunch of other people, wearing the same type of glasses, and maybe you want to buy that glass. That's also, peer pressure. So, it- anything can be peer pressure, I believe. And why do people fall into peer pressure? I don't think that, like, I mean, when I was writing this question, I myself found it a little bit of a stupid question, because I don't think people fall into peer pressure. It's a very natural thing. Like, you seeing surrounded by such people, on a let's say on a daily basis, or it can be something that you're consuming on your social media itself. Whatever you're watching on your social media on your daily basis, or the people you're surrounded by on a daily basis, you know uh, you are seeing that, and you have for you're seeing this, and probably seeing that you're so used to seeing that your mind is already thinking, maybe this is not as this is not a, like, your mind is so used to seeing this that you yourself might be trying that. Something, it can be something as a food trend also, that you might see on, and you keep trying that food trend itself is peer is it's that's a peer pressure, because you naturally you've seen those kind of videos, those food trends so many times, that you just naturally, your mind has decided this is something, that I this is the best thing, and I want to do it. And like these small things, I think just being influenced by the smallest things is itself is peer pressure. And I don't think necessarily, it's like when you have become a victim of peer pressure, you do not know that you have become one, right? Like it's a very normal thing. You don't know that you become a victim of peer pressure. Like I don't everyone has been a victim of peer pressure, every single one of them. But it's hard for us to accept that we are, like, if you pinpoint at someone and tell that that you're doing this because of peer pressure, they probably won't accept it. But I think anything can be peer pressure. So you know uh, if it may yeah, I think the word peer, and the reason why they're taking it so negatively is, I think, because peer pressure has always been considered as a, it's almost become like a bad term. Any bad habit, seen, and they consider that as a peer pressure. So because of that, I think people just won't, they just don't like that word, and it's used at them. And peer pressure is something that kids and teenagers fall into this whole loop of peer pressure, right? And I feel like it's different with children and it's different with teenagers. Let's get into children first. Why do children become victim of peer pressure? They're kids, man. They're children, right? So I feel like children's observe so much, right? And they need some amount of, like, they need their behaviors, the kind of stuff they like, their behaviors, their mannerisms, the way they talk, what they enjoy, that those things, they sit and observe them, and they get influenced by pretty much anything. Kids can get even influenced by the shows that they have been they that they watch as kids, those shows that they watch as kids. And if okay, let's just say WWE. If kids grow up watching WWE, and they and they try doing some stunt, that itself is a victim, that that itself is, in some way, like, kids will do that because they observe, and kids are very curious at the same time. So kids will do anything, yeah. Because of that, anything can influence kids, yeah. So that's why, like, and that's why, especially, I mean, I was reading this article somewhere, and they said, like, there was this bunch of kids, where only one kid was supposed to have, where they were testing one kid out of the bunch of kids. And and they wanted to know what that answer the kid would give. And because he was with a group of people, he ended up giving the same answer that all his friends were giving. But when they asked him individually, he gave a different answer. So I think, when like if they ask the kids, what's your uh what's their favorite show, they probably will watch show that other kids are watching very easily. So for kids, the smallest things that they observe, and it makes them, like, they probably, okay, let's just say they saw a grown up chewing gum. And the chewing gum, and he and chewing gum is considered disrespectful in some way or the other. But for the kid, the thing is cool, right? Yeah. This, even that small thing, But for a teenager, do you think a teenager is going to see someone chewing bubblegum and get in, and feel like I'm also going to chew bubblegum? No, yeah. Yeah, like, because it's just as they are a grown up, for them it's different, but for kids, that smallest thing can be so cool because they're young, right? So, like, the smallest of the smallest things can influence kids. Yeah, so which is why I feel like the whatever negative kind of peer pressures that are there, it I think it's the worst for. I feel like the children can become the most susceptible victims. I believe for for peer pressure, for the worst ones. Um, but the teenagers, that's they are the interesting. It's a little like they always say, like, teenagers are the epitome of peer pressure. So I think that's because teenagers, when you reach your teenage age, is where you are more aware about how others, about your perception to other people. So what other so because of because you're so like you're so constantly thinking about your perception of other people, and that's a natural thing. I think as you grow older and when you reach that age, that's a normal thing. So because of that, you are more influenced by just the people around you, more than being influenced by anything at all, which is why, uh like I said, children can be influenced by anything. Teenagers are more influenced by the people that they're surrounded by more than anything, which is why a lot of uh, like which is why, like, the parents are always scared of their kids, especially at a teenage age, with the kind of friends that they are always with, right? And they're scared to go out there. If their kid is telling, I'm going to go out, they are scared to take the kids, because they're also scared what kind of people they're hanging around with, right? And that's simply because this is the age where the people believe you can be most easily susceptible to any kind of habits, because of the kind of people you're surrounded by. And the thing is, because you're surrounded by such people, sometimes I think naturally you yourself don't know that you have become, you yourself are falling as a prey to such kind of habits itself. And I think it's a completely, because you're also surrounded by such people, towards the end you have no clue, that you're probably doing something right or wrong. But because everyone around you are doing it, and they also, in some weird way or the other, they were convinced, you are surrounded by them, you also naturally got convinced. So which is why sometimes peer pressure can be a good thing, and it can be a bad thing as well, right, for some people. And that's because, yeah, like I said, it's a very natural thing to get, but the the thing about this is, like, people also ask, what is the solution to this, like, how can kids get out of it? I don't think, I don't know, like, for me, I feel like there are certain things where you also need a certain, I think you need a certain level of maturity, to understand some certain things, and which is why, like, what you were doing when you were probably 15, 16, when you're 5 years down the line, you would feel very stupid, but at the time you didn't feel stupid, right, with whatever you did. But so what I'm trying to say is, there is no solution. I don't think there's an answer to, like, how to get, I read, how to not be a fall of peer pressure. It just happens. I think as you grow older, you start realizing that peer pressure is very, how to say, it's, I don't know if overrated is the right term, but like, you start, over the years, you start realizing being influenced by others is, it's pointless. You need to reevaluate yourself. You do that a lot at an older age, and you don't really try doing that much as a teenager. And as a teenager, you're more trying to figure yourself out more than anything. And so at that time, and at that time, figuring yourself out is basically your perception towards the others. So that's why you end up doing stuff that may be good or may be bad, we do not know. But maybe But at that time there are some things that need some certain amount of maturity as well to understand, which we won't understand at the time. So that's the thing. Like peer, I think that's why, like, people always keep telling, like, what is the solution to peer pressure? There is no solution. It's a natural thing. I think everyone is everyone end up falling under the peer, as a victim of peer pressure. And as they get older they will realize it. So, and at the time I feel like if you're going to try telling them to stop, they think, they don't think it's wrong, right, at the time. Yeah. And so when it happens to them, yeah, and you're trying to advise them, they're not going to sit and listen. And sometimes those people themselves who advise, the adults who advise them, they probably have done the mistake when they were teenagers. So as adults they're trying to correct the teenagers, but I feel like adults also need to realize, that they were in the same place as them at maybe at one point. So, and they realized it only as they got older. That kid also, probably will realize it as, he gets older, I believe. you know so, I think we just need to hope for the, best of how teenagers will, what kind of influence that they are, what they are surrounded by. And like, I think what your life principles, your moral values, all are depending on the way you are brought up, the way, with the kind of people you're surrounded by on a daily life. And also, like, as the years you get older, you start understanding things a lot better, right? So that's why I feel like the moral values in you, your life principles that you have, all of this, it's not something that you can decide. It just naturally gets molded because of, your life, the people that are around you, how much you've matured and understood things. These are the things. So I think peer pressure is also again one of those things. I don't know how much teenagers can understand it at the time. They will realize it later. I'm sure, they'll realize it later. And another thing I want to say is peer pressure. They always consider peer pressure negative. There are positive things as well. Like I said, peer pressure is being influenced by others. So, it can be even as if a kid is surrounded by people who are more, you know, who are good, well-mannered kids who are more, you know, studious. They, by seeing them focusing on their studies, if this kids also end up focusing on study, that's also peer pressure. But nobody tells that, right, that it's peer pressure, but it is. He got, and that's a good thing. Even uh, what you thought, maybe you thought something that was like maybe you had a bad, or you had a different, perspective of something. But the moment you're surrounded by such people, you have a different perspective, right? So if you have a better because you're surrounded by people having a better perspective of things, that's also, uh, that's in one way or another, it's indirectly, it's become peer pressure, because you have also end up having the same thing, opinion as your other friends have. So, and if it's a, and it's definitely, if it's a good opinion, then definitely I don't think there's anything wrong, in peer pressure. Sometimes I feel like people think of peer pressure as a very bad thing, but I don't think so. So one thing, I can't necessarily advise any teenagers about peer pressure, but one thing I can tell you is, if you feel like, if you feel like this is not wrong, but the people around you are feeling it's right, one of the best thing to do is, not to surround yourself by those people. Because, I genuinely feel like, because if you still feel like it's wrong, but I'm with but these people think it's right, but they're my friends, I want to be with them, maybe naturally you yourself will end up start thinking it's right. So I think the best thing is to, try finding a better group of friends. And, as you will get influenced by your friends, at that age. So I think it's best to hope to have the better influence, I would say. So, there is no, I don't think there's any answer to for peer pressure. I think, it'll always be there. So, that's the end of it. I hope I've spoken and covered a lot of things for you guys. And, I will, once again, I'll come back to the announcement. FEBA is doing a gathering on 23rd March at 5:30 p.m. on a Saturday. If you guys want to register, please register at 63642524 and 64. This will be a very interesting and a fun gathering for all of us. We would get to know you guys, and you guys would get to know other people as well, and you would get to know us definitely. So this is something we are looking, we are really, we are very positive about it, and we hope, you guys come as well. So if, again, if you guys ever want to get in touch with FIBA, you guys want to know about us, talk to us, you have any questions for us, please get in touch with us at 6364252464. As of now, signing off, Johan. See you guys